Coming up on today's Locked On Senators, we are still buzzing after the news that Jake Sanderson has signed an 8-year extension. But what does it mean for the Senators in the short, medium, and long term?
And we continue our organizational value rankings with 3 very different players, all different positions.
And one of them might be hearing footsteps right behind him. That's all coming up on today's edition of the Locked On Senators podcast. It's your team every day.
Your Locked On Senators, your daily podcast on the Ottawa Senators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
I'm Jake Sanderson, and you're listening to Locked On Senators podcast.
I'm Tim Stützle, and you're listening to the Locked On Senators podcast.
Welcome inside episode 869 of the Locked On Senators podcast. I'm Ross Levitan on the outskirts of enemy territory in Winnipeg, Manitoba. Alongside Brandon Piller up in the Blue Mountains, we have to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by Bird Dogs. Go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNHL and use promo code LockedOnNHL for a free water bottle with every order. You don't want to take your Bird Dogs off, we promise. birddogs.com/LockedOnNHL. A reminder, you can also find Locked On Senators on social media at Sens Central on Twitter, at LockedOn.Senators on Instagram, free and available wherever you download your podcasts. And make sure you hit the notification bell so you know when bonus videos drop, like last night where Pilsy and Martian turned on their mics moments after the news that Jake Sanderson signed his 8-year extension that Pilsy so gently reminded me will take me through past when I'm 40 years old.
I mean, hey, if that's the worst part of the news of the Jake Sanderson signing an 8-year extension, that's not too bad, Ross.
It is unbelievable to see the discourse, not only with Senators fans, but then you look at what's going on with the other fan bases using it as a point of contention. And I get it to an extent if you just saw the numbers. We kind of did the same, and it was for less value. But Mathieu Samuelsson was the guy in Buffalo where he had played like 30 games. They locked him up to a long-term deal. Inside the organization, you kind of have your own hierarchy. And I think one thing that was clear with Pierre Dorion, he saw how it worked out with Tim Stützle last year. These are the 2 building blocks of the team, that 2020 draft. He got Timmy at probably, $1 million less? Now, here's my question to you that I want to get. How much more do you think Jake Sanderson would have earned if he had another step forward this year? Would it have been that much more?
Well, it all depends on the length, Ross. Like I've been saying over and over, kind of beating the drum of the fact that I really thought Sanderson and his agent and his team would go for a bridge deal. Like I thought for sure it was going to be a 3x6 deal. And then once the TV ratings and new deal comes up, once the NHL economy has recovered from COVID, then he was going to sign his big deal. So the Senators did a great job convincing him, hey, we want you here long-term. We'll give you big money up front. And let's get this done. And you also got to credit Brady Tkachuk and the leadership group in Ottawa because they're creating a culture where young guys are signing long extensions as soon as possible. So it's a great feeling. And I think Jake Sanderson's got to be very happy with a $64.4 million extension. And I think the Ottawa Senators have to be happy. And the Sens fans, there's no reason not to be happy about this. So it's a win-win-win situation.
And the streets have already reported, thanks to our friend at Williams Martian, that Michael Andlauer is at the CTC today. Martian is representing Sens Central at the CTC today. We're invited down there, so I'm looking forward to getting some boots on the ground analysis at what's going on, because last year it was Tim Stützle signing, and at Williams Martian decided to ask Alex DeBrincat, hey, there's some pressure to score goals here, and we saw how that folded under pressure for number 12 of last year. But now it's Jake Sanderson signing, and man, just watching his highlights back, and for him, it's like the little plays are so subtle. You just watch, you're like, that guy was 20 years old. He just turned 21 in July. And I look at everything I've heard about this guy from North Dakota, from talking to Alex Heiner, Brad Schlossman, everyone around him. He's the most driven athlete going. I don't think, because I saw some people being like, hey, if I were to get the bag like that after only 77 games, like my motivation to, be the best might wane. That's not the case for Jake Sanderson. He's still going to be the first guy at the gym in the morning and the first guy on the ice and ready to rock. So I have zero concern about motivation being a factor. I see this guy as a guy who's going to wear a letter for the Senators in the future, and they know and recognize that he's a part of the core. So get it locked up, get that full term, and away we go. None of these 4-year deals for star players. We don't need those in Ottawa.
Well, yeah, exactly. That's the player taking advantage of the team in that situation. But the thing with Jake Sanderson is, I agree with you, Ross. I really don't think this is a guy that's motivated by money. Like, he's a Montana native. Like, maybe he buys a better fishing boat and a nice cottage. Like, I don't think he'd be out there getting the best cars or doing anything absolutely crazy. And the thing is, a lot of these guys, I think Tim Stützle might be in a similar situation. They just want their contract to be figured out. Like, they don't want it hanging over their head. And now that it's figured out, now they can fully focus on just the game of hockey. And like you mentioned, Jake Sanderson, a very motivated player. And I think he's motivated to help this team win, just like Tim Stützle talked about in his recent article as well. So with having those two guys locked up and extending them with 1 year left on their entry-level contract is an absolute blessing. And this is something Marcia and I were talking about after we recorded, Ross. So I'll throw it to you and get your opinion on it. Whose contract do you think is going to have more value, Tim Stützle or Jake Sanderson?
I would probably lean Tim Stützle, just because you're looking at a perennial 100-point player, hopefully, and a guy who's going to be the driving force offensively. But I've also been told over and over again by multiple people, and Brad Schlossman, I'm going to go back and maybe I'll just put the link to our Brad Schlossman interview right when Jake Sanderson signed. It's only been a year and a little bit since he signed his first contract, and now here he is on deal number 2 that's going to take him through the next 9 seasons, and he's still on his entry level for this year. But Brad Schlossman was telling us, same thing in college. First few months, defense, simple. Then once he gets comfortable, the offense starts coming out. So what's making, I think, this be a really smart bet for the Ottawa Senators is right now he's a 33-point defenseman, 30-point defenseman. We're right in that range. If he can take a step and be 50 points next year, 55, 60, like, you're looking at the elite value. And I know some people were quick to dismiss me when I keep bringing up Miro Heiskanen as
that's literally what I'm Googling right now to compare, but go ahead.
Well, because everyone's like, oh, look at the offensive numbers for Heiskanen. He only cracked 40 points for the first time this past season in his 5th year in the league. He was a 30-point guy, but brought so much value around that with his skating, his fluidity, never panicking under pressure. And that's what I see Jake Sanderson bringing to the Ottawa Senators, is just poise personified, a guy who battles in front of the net, never takes penalties, never puts his team in bad situations, and puts every pass right on the tape. And let's not forget the X factor here, Pilsy. You and I love Travis Hamonic as a depth defenseman. Him playing with Zub, Chychrun, or Shabbat is going to only help his development to the next level next year.
Absolutely. Yeah. And Jake Sanderson is the top time on ice defenseman for shorthanded time on ice. So that's huge when you got a guy that can kill penalties like that. I want to touch on the Heiskanen comparison, Ross, because I believe, and people can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I read this in Ian's Athletic article, is Miro Heiskanen signed his big extension after a 27-point season. Similar to Jake Sanderson. And Dallas Stars fans, they're not sitting there being like, oh, he only got 27 points, this is an overpay. No, because Heiskanen does so much more than just put up points. And there's no reason why Jake Sanderson can't have that same kind of explosion of points at the same kind of pace that Heiskanen had. Because the next year he had 36, and then last season, 73 points.
Totally. Now, I will say, and maybe this is the extra $400,000 that Heiskanen got, but Heiskanen also had 26 points in the bubble when they went to the Stanley Cup Finals in 27 games.
Yeah, so that's absolutely huge.
He had also had a bit of an offensive explosion there. And man, I'm excited to get Mark Mathieu's take on this, because he got to play a little bit with Miro Heiskanen, and I'm really curious to get his thoughts. He's still dormant in summer vacation mode, but we're going to get Meth back on here sooner rather than later. I got a little more I want to get to on Jake Sanderson. We'll do that after the break, and then we are into our NHL tier number 4 on our organizational value rankings. That's all next. You're listening to Locked On Senators.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Bird Dogs. If you guys are watching on YouTube, Ross and I both have our Bird Dog hats on, and this hat, hands down, the most comfortable hat I've ever worn. Every time I slide it on top of my big noggin, I'm like, that fits comfortably. It looks great, the all white, and that's what Bird Dogs does. They have shorts, pants that fit comfortably and look good. I love their stretch khaki shorts. They're designed to fit slimmer through the thigh and leg, so you get that truly sculpted look, that athletic look. Bird Dogs do the exact same thing as Lululemon, but fit way better. They're not that regular restricting cotton that's so stiff and gets y'all hot in the summertime. No, they've got a cloud knit fabric that looks just like a khaki, but stretches, so you don't have to sacrifice any of that movement. And on a hot summer day, they've got anti-stink sweat fabric so that you can be cool and dry all day long. Bird Dog is perfect for any function. Golf, date night, you're out with your friends, hanging by the pool, working out, heading to work, whatever it is, you can wear your Bird Dog shorts. I always have Bird Dog shorts ready. They are my favorite shorts. They're my go-to. Every time I reach into my shorts drawer, I'm looking for the Bird Dogs first. And you can do the same by going to birddogs.com/LockedOnNHL or enter promo code LockedOnNHL at checkout for a free. They always throw something free in. Before, it was the Bird Dogs Yeti. I got it here. The Bird Dogs hat. Now I'm just waiting on this one. It's a free Bird Dog water bottle with your order. That's birddogs.com/LockedOnNHL for a free water bottle at checkout. You won't want to take your Bird Dogs off. We promise you.
Today's episode is also brought to you by our friends at Shawarma Palace. Go visit any of Shawarma Palace's 7 locations in Ottawa today and make sure that you get that fulfillment that you deserve. The freshest ingredients, the tastiest meat, so juicy, whether you get the chicken, the beef, you get the falafels in there, perfectly crisp, and it's all served on a bed of perfectly fluffy rice. You get the lettuce in there, you get the hummus, you get the garlic sauce, you get it all at Shawarma Palace with their own homemade pita. It is also delicious. And if you want it brought right to you, exclusively on Uber Eats, you can find Shawarma Palace. So go eat like a royal today. Go get the wrap, go get the sandwich, go get the platter, all of it available at their 7 Ottawa locations. They're all over town. You're never too far away from a Shawarma Palace. If you want to see all the locations, go check them out on Instagram, Shawarma Palace Ottawa. So eat like a royal today. Go eat at Shawarma Palace. All right, Pilsy. Got some organizational value rankings to do, but I've got a point-blank question for you.
Hit me.
Who is the best defenseman on the Ottawa Senators heading into this season?
It's Jake Sanderson. This, and don't get this twisted, this is not a Thomas Chabot slander segment. This is a elevating Jake Sanderson segment because he's just able to do so much more than Thomas Chabot. Thomas Chabot definitely has his strengths, like good transitionally. He's a good offensive player, makes crisp passes. He's often tasked with shutting down the top opponent's lines, as he's been a top pair defenseman for this team for so long. But I think Sanderson elevating to being the top guy is really going to help Chabot's production out, because he's not going to have to be that guy that puts the entire D-core on his shoulders anymore. So I think it's a win-win. Like, Jake Sanderson is elevating, and I think that's going to make Tom Chabot's role a little bit more suitable for a guy like him. And another example, Ross, with the Heiskanen one, is when Heiskanen started really to develop into a great player. And I'm not saying that this is going to happen to the Sens, but they realized they didn't need John Klingberg to be the guy there anymore. And again, I'm not saying Thomas Chabot is going to end up like John Klingberg, certainly not on the Leafs, that's for sure. But it just goes to show that this is kind of, it allows a team to gradually transition into newer players and generations. And I'm glad Jake Sanderson is the one at the helm of that.
Yes, a very dependable player, Jake Sanderson. He's my answer as well. Watching him, and a great point you made during last night's breaking news. So I'll let people go listen to that for the more expanded version. but we saw a glimpse of him being the number one defenseman when Chychrun and Chabot were out of the lineup. So there is some tape on him of being the 30-minute guy, minute-munching defenseman, and he still just didn't take penalties, still made easy plays and made hard plays look easy. No panic in his game. So I'm super excited to see. And for some people, and I'm pretty sure John Rodenberg was just trying to get a few laughs, a few maybe angry clicks there. Program director at TSN 1200 tweeting out saying that them giving Sanderson $50,000 more a year than Chabot is some sort of message. If you look at the percentage of cap, which is I think what teams more look like.
Well, we got to start doing, Ross. I've been preaching that.
It's less than what Chabot got. And Chabot committed at a time when nobody else was willing to.
Other than Colin White.
He's still getting his bag for the next 5 years off of that buyout. But I just really think that this is a fair deal. And then you look at it, and it's like Jake Sanderson was the 5th overall pick. Chabot was 18th overall. Like, there's some pedigree differentials there that I think have to go into consideration. But all in all, it's just hilarious.
And the jersey number. It's the jersey number thing as well, 85.
It is hilarious to see the disconnect between what I would call smart hockey people, the Cam Robinsons of the world, elite prospects, and Mike Kelly with the Sport Logique. And well, you got to think Sean Tierney, the newest hire for the Ottawa Senators, their full-time analytics guy, probably had to sign off on this one as well. But then you see the other half of the equation, people just absolutely throwing rocks at Jake Sanderson. And I think the rule should be, if you criticize the Tim Stützle extension last summer, you're not allowed to criticize the Jake Sanderson one this summer. Because you're going to, fool me once, shame on you. Is that how it goes? Fool me twice, shame on me?
Yes.
Ding,
Correct.
ding, ding.
Ross, I don't give a damn about other fan bases making comments. Like, I saw, it's all over. Like, Leafs fans on TikTok even saying, "Oh wow, what an overpayment!" Oh yeah, big time. On Instagram, like, people around town, talking about the deal here in Collingwood. It's all Leafs fans, and I just let them yammer on because Sens fans know and understand how good this guy is. And I think, Ross, as soon as next year, $8 million a year is going to be a steal. Like, by the time this contract kicks in, it will be a great deal. That's how little it's going to take.
The Senators have their core. That much is for sure.
Yep.
They've got 5 players signed at around $8 million, thanks to Josh Norris for taking a few pennies less to make that around number. Norris is signed for 7 more years at 7.95. Chabot, $8 million for 5 more years. Jake Sanderson, $8 million and $50,000 for 9 more years after, of course, the entry level for this one. Then the money goes up. Brady Tkachuk signed for 5 years at 8.2, and Tim Stützle signed for 8 more years at 8.35. So it's a great time to buy a jersey if you're an Ottawa Senators fan, because the core is locked up. You can throw Joonas Korpisalo in there on a 5-year deal, but obviously he's making half the amount of money at $4 million annually. Korpisalo, not on today's organizational value rankings, but the Senators' other goalie is. We'll get to that next. You're listening to Locked On Senators. All right, Pilsy. Still buzzing. What a deal for Jake Sanderson. And as you mentioned as well last night, we have to go back to the organizational value rankings, and no spoilers, but I did tell you I moved someone up into the top tier.
I wonder who.
Before. I'm just saying, I moved someone up into the top tier. I did. There's a 3-player tier at the top, and I'll just say they're all signed long-term. That's all I'll say for now. If you've missed any of the organizational value rankings, a reminder that you can go to YouTube and see each individual one posted as its own standalone video. Make it nice and easy to navigate as we get into training camp, preseason. If there's a player that has a standout performance, you want a little season preview on them, those will live forever individually on YouTube. We've got up till 30 now, and then this weekend I'll post the next 2 tiers, and so on and so forth. Thank you for riding with us every single day. Season 5 of the show is around the corner. It's unbelievable to think, and it's easy to know that without your support, we would not have a show. So thank you all for making us your first listen each and every day. Pillsy, 7 episodes this week between the bonus and the Ring of Honor. New Ring of Honor dropping this upcoming Sunday. But for now, it's time to get back to the rankings. Coming in at number 17 on our organizational value rankings heading into 2023, it's Mathieu Joseph, who I think, admittedly, it was a down year for him, but he came in so hot after the trade from Tampa, then got so cold. You have to think that there's some sort of happy middle in between there that he could find.
Yeah, I do believe that. Now, I've said this many times. I do believe also that Mathieu Joseph is the most likely candidate on the chopping block to get the Pinto deal done. But again, I don't want people to twist that into me thinking that Joseph is no good or he has no potential or it's a brutal contract or anything like that. I do see the potential in Mathieu Joseph. It was just such a down year. I think maybe him and DJ Smith don't always see eye to eye. It just seems like it's not clicking for them. And he wasn't able to find success last year. I think a big part of that is he often was on the third line and without Shane Pinto, without any other kind of offensive talented guys on the third line for most of the season. He wasn't really put in a position to succeed like he was when he was brought in for that trade. He was on the top line with Brady Tkachuk and Josh Norris. Like, you damn better put up points and have success when that's the spot you're in. So I really think we're going to see a bounce back here from Joseph, whether it's here in Ottawa, which that's where he is now. So that's what we'll go under the assumption is. Like, a line of Kubalik, Pinto, and Joseph, I think would be a great third line.
If they can afford it.
That's the thing. I don't know if that's possible, but I definitely think that's somewhere where Joseph could have some success.
Last year, his most common line mate was Tyler Mott. And that reason was Mathieu Joseph missed a number of games due to an injury sustained in their game against Calgary, where him and Tyler Toffoli went into the boards awkwardly. And I don't know if it was a knee or they just called it lower body, but when you're skating forward, when your stride is your most important thing, you got to think that affected him a little bit. But you look at the numbers last year, 56 games, only 3 goals. 3 goals, 1 for each year he has left on his contract. He has 15 assists, 18 points, 36 penalty minutes, was a plus player, though, on the Senators at +5. And as we note at the bottom there, scored 0 even strength goals last season. Pilsy signed for 3 more years at 2.95. But what really kind of surprised me, I guess, if for lack of a better term, out of those 3 goals, he didn't score more than 1 in each individual method. He had 1 power play goal, he had 1 shorthanded goal, and he had 1 3-on-5 shorthanded goal against his old team, a breakaway that he made no mistake on Vasilevsky. So it's one of those where he's shown flashes. He's a great penalty killer, but it's like, what can he do to get consistency into his performances?
Yeah, for me, for Joseph to have success this year, he's got to be a top penalty killer. That's what, because I was like, okay, if the points aren't going to be there like we thought they were, and like his contract kind of reflected the Senators, or at least Pierre Dorion thought he was going to get points, then what's his B game? What's he going to do differently? And I think he can be that type of guy that is going to be an offensive threat on the penalty kill, because he's got that speed. So you're making a D-to-D pass on the power play if you're an opponent, and boom, he intercepts that pass and he's off. Or D fumbles a bobbling puck at the D line, he sneaks around him and he's gone. Like kind of like how he scored that 3-on-5 goal like you were talking about. So for him to be an important part of this team and contribute, I think penalty killing is where he's going to make his mark.
Do you think he plays another game for the Ottawa Senators?
I mean, at this point, yeah, because if they were going to move him, they'd move him. But I guess this is the issue with Pierre Dorion trades, is he never has the leverage. He has no leverage right now. We had the discussion on Twitter, or at least there was a discussion on one of our posts saying, well, could you just send him down and someone picks him up through waivers? But why would a team pick him up through waivers if they know they can try to get a sweetener out of it as well? So, and then if he clears waivers, then you're in no better spot. I think you get a bit of cap relief burying guys in the minors, but not enough to make a difference.
No, and it's also a situation too where it's like, okay, maybe a team thinks they can leverage that to get you to retain $1 million or whatnot.
And then what's the point if you're retaining salary?
No, and it's just ice cold right now in terms of the asset value. Like, he's never going to have a lower value.
No.
It'd be a shame to trade him at the very depths of it when you could wait and hopefully he comes back with a bang. I think you're right. Teammate utilization is a big thing for him last year. He played 150 minutes at even strength with Dylan Gambrell last year, 168 with Pinto, but probably with Mott on the other side, who was just a black hole for offense last year, just couldn't get anything going outside of his hot start where he had, I think, 7 points.
I was a huge Tyler Mott guy to start the year off.
I know, but yeah, Mathieu Joseph, I think that he needs to be surrounded. He's not going to be a line driver by himself. I think he really needs a playmaking centerman or someone who can get him the puck in the right situations. And if nothing else, just like you said, be an elite penalty killer. And we'll see if Mathieu Joseph can do that this season. Last year, he was 13th on our list. And to be fair, he was coming off an extremely impressive finish to the year where he had 12 points in 11 games after joining Ottawa. This year, he's down 4 spots. Mathieu Joseph comes in at number 17 on our organizational value rankings. All right, coming in at number 16 on our organizational value rankings heading into the 2023 season, it's Anton Forsberg. And it's so unfortunate that the double MCL tear ended his season in the game after the All-Star break, because I think Senators fans were really appreciating the consistency that he was starting to deliver on like he did the previous year. But it's just this year, I mean, November was so up and down in terms of the consistency for the team. But as a fan, I'm always confident when Forsberg's got the start. Maybe, though, Pillsy, the first time we ever saw him live was that 46-save win against the Leafs in the home opener in 2021. So we've seen this guy can stand on his head. And when he does, man, he's a sick goalie.
Yeah, I'm a big Anton Forsberg fan. I think he is the perfect 1B goalie, and the Senators hope that they found their 1A guy in Korpisalo, and those guys should have a good tandem together. They have a relationship from back in their days in the Columbus organization, playing for the AHL affiliate team, having success winning a Calder Cup. So I think this tandem can be really good. And yeah, like you mentioned, Ross, before he got hurt, before the All-Star game, he was on a 4-game win streak. Like that was huge. And I think we're looking at a scenario here. I was trying to think of the proper game divide I want between Korpisalo and Forsberg. Ross, tell me if you think this is right around accurate. I think I'd like to see 47 games for Korpisalo and 35 for Forsberg.
I thought you were going to say 41 and 41. I would have had a great laugh.
No, I did the math on this one. I got the calculator out and figured it out. But yeah, 47 for Korpisalo, 35 for Forsberg.
Yeah, I'd be happy with that, let's say. And what I hope DJ does, and more so Zach Burke, because DJ's been pretty clear, like the goalie coach makes the decision of who's going to start that night. Let these guys stay hot.
Yes.
Right? Last year, I felt they did do that at the start, like when Talbot was playing, but it was also kind of predicated by injury.
Exactly, yeah.
Of the year, and then Forsberg was out for a little bit, and then obviously the season ender changed everything, and Cam Talbot just couldn't stay healthy. But with Anton Forsberg, man, like I'm excited to see how he comes back from this injury. Last year, he played 28 games, went 11-11-2, 326 goals against, 902 save percentage, and 2 shutouts. He signed for 2 more years this year and 1 more at $2.75 million. And I'd be happy with that. You look at Forsberg's history, right? Like he's a guy who's been in that role where he's playing 30, 35 games. And I don't really want to ask him to do too much more than that, especially coming off such a serious injury. But man, I don't want him playing 46 like he did his first full season in Ottawa. Like, yeah, split the difference, which is, I think, what you're pretty much doing there, Pillsy, between the 46 he played last year and the 28 he played this year. So, man, there's a sweet spot in there somewhere, but he's certainly given the Senators competent goal. He's actually played 82 games, Pillsy, as a Senator, so an exact full season. And he's got a 911 save percentage. So if he can keep that save percentage between 910 and 915, I think the Sens are in a good spot next year.
What I'm interested to see with Forsberg going forward is you mentioned it with the home opener against the Leafs, 40 plus saves. And he had that stat. I'm forgetting it now, but didn't he have the most wins in the league when he has 40 plus saves or something? It was something along the lines of 40 plus saves, he ends up being really good. So now that the Sens decor is bolstered, arguably their best decor in a long time, I wonder if he's going to be able to thrive with a little less action, because some goalies, they thrive on feeling the puck, being involved in the game. I wonder if that will have an impact on him, but that only time will tell. I'm sure that he's still going to be a solid option there. And he said it. He's 100%. He's on the ice practicing. He said he would have been ready last season if the Sens had made it to the playoffs. So as far as the injury concerns, right off the bat, I'm not concerned. But as you get into a long season and he's getting up there, he's a 30-year-old goalie now, and you're looking at coming off 2 MCL injuries. Hopefully the grind of the season doesn't get to him. So I'm kind of hoping, Ross, that Korpisalo will be playing games in long stretches and then sprinkle Forsberg in for a 1 or 2 game stretch in between. That's kind of my idea for how they're going to work this.
Yeah, and I think that they'll figure it out internally and how much each guy should play and all that. I'm not worried about it. I'm just excited to see Anton Forsberg get back out on the ice, and super happy that he's had a full summer of training, that we're not going to worry about if and how his knees are feeling on opening night or whenever he gets his first start. Now, he had quite the rise up our rankings. The first year he was ranked was 2021. He was 37th. He went all the way up to 11th. And now a little bit of a market correction. He's down 5 spots, but still in a very respectable area at number 16 on our organizational value rankings.
And before we wrap, I just want to ask one more question. Do you put him in net for the home opener? No, he's been in net for the last couple home openers. And Ross, I'll remind you, both those home openers were with big, like 1A starting goalie type goalies being brought in. Now, both those times they were injured in Matt Murray and Cam Talbot, but I don't think they'll do that. Obviously, bringing Korpisalo in for a big ticket, you want him in the home opener. But I'll tell you this: I wouldn't be upset if Forsberg started the home opener.
Back to back, both at home. Like, he's going to play that weekend.
Yeah, so get him in the home opener then. Yeah, and then have Korpisalo in against Tampa.
All right, keep the streak going. Let us know in the comments who you want to start the home opener. There's a nice topic of discussion, because they play Wednesday in Carolina and then off, back-to-back at home. So which one? Do you want him playing against the Philadelphia Flyers in a matinee, or do you want him playing against Tampa on Sunday? Coming in at number 15 on our organizational value rankings, it's the franchise, Erik Brannstrom.
I mean, I'm excited for this one. Erik Brannstrom. Once Logan Brown had left the Sens organization, Erik Brannstrom has now been the most polarizing player for Sens fans online. And hey, at least people are talking about him. If I'm Brandy, I'm looking at this as a positive way, because there's the analytics community that absolutely adores him, and the numbers are there to back it up. And then the old-time hockey type thinking, where it's like, hey, if you're going to be a defenseman, you got to be big, strong, and mean. And that's not what Erik Brannstrom is. So there's a divide there for sure. I like to think I come somewhere in the middle, probably leaning a little bit more towards the analytical side of looking at Erik Brannstrom, because as you guys know, I've been a big Brandy guy. I feel like every time Ross and I do the organizational value rankings, I'm pushing to get Brandy bumped up there. I would even say this year, I would have bumped him up higher if it was my own personal list. But here we are with Brandy at this spot, and I think he had a great season, and he was rewarded with a 1 year, $2 million extension.
Elsie, he's up 9 spots from last year. I don't know what more you want from me. Now, that was a bit of a market correction in itself, because when we started this, we were so hyped on the Erik Brannstrom trade.
Yeah.
He had just been traded there at the deadline before COVID comes, takes out the year. We put him at 5th.
That was definitely my influence there.
And next year, we had him at 7th, Pilsy. He didn't even move down that much. And then he went down to 24 last year. So now he's back up at 15. But you mentioned it, like the poise with the puck was starting to show more and more at the NHL level. It was proved with that end-to-end goal he scored against Tampa at the end of the season. Had 2 goals, 16 assists, 18 points, 38 penalty minutes, was +5, 74 games. And you know what? Like, the way DJ Smith describes him, it's what he is. He moves pucks. Like, that's what he does. He moves pucks. And I think that every good team needs that. Now, does Ottawa have a surplus of that, though, when you look at Chychrun, Chabot, and Sanderson all being able to kind of do the same thing, but with other areas? The battle for Erik Brannstrom is always going to be moving guys away from the front of the net and those defensive board battles. And it's something where he's going to have to use leverage in terms of positioning rather than just his brute size, like a Tyler Kleven can, just by protecting the puck with his frame. But where Branny has improved a ton, and I give him a lot of credit for this because his career would not have been very long if he didn't. He doesn't get smoked every game now. Remember last year, 2 years ago, Pillsy?
Yeah.
Every game he was getting licked 2-3 times behind the net. Now he's starting to be smarter with how he's evading forecheckers. And I really think that step in the right direction has allowed him to play more meaningful minutes because he's not, recovering from a huge hit that he took a shift earlier. So I think that was a huge step forward for Erik Brannstrom. And now next, it's either going to be, how is he going to get more opportunity in offensive situations? Because let's be honest, like offensive zone faceoff, Branny's ready to go, but also Jake's ready to go. Also, Shabby's ready to go. If Jake was just on the ice, if you're a coach, you're probably going to put those two guys out there before him. They're all left shot defensemen. They're all kind of doing the same. So he's going to have to find his niche continuously if he's going to be an Ottawa Senator everyday defenseman.
Well, I actually think I'm going to spin this the other way, Ross, and I'll push back on that. I think instead of finding his niche, he just needs to continue to be a jack of all trades guy. And that's the point I always bring home.
Ends, though, right?
What?
Master of none is how that phrase ends.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah. Because there's masters of all different types of defenders that you want on the Ottawa Senators, right? Like there's guys that do things better than him, and that's just a plain fact. Like I'll quickly do my Brandy versatility segment here. He can play left side, he can play right side. He can play on your top pair, second pair, short sample size. Obviously, you don't want him there, but if there's injuries, he can do it. He can play on the power play. He can play shorthanded. He can move pucks in transition. His defensive game has gotten so much better. Like, obviously, he's not one of the top defenders on this team, but he's not a liability out there defensively, in my opinion. And he can play with anyone. I love going to Natural Stat Trick and looking at his stats. Ross, last year, who do you want to peg as the top pair last year? The pair with Jake Sanderson on it, so Sanderson and Hamonic, or the pair with Chabot and Zub?
Chabot and Zub. Come on.
Chabot and Zub. Okay. They had a Corsi 4 of 50.68. Nick Holden was with Erik Brannstrom for 440 minutes. Their Corsi 4 was 55.69. Now, obviously, you can say that's third pair. They're going against lesser competition. Totally fair. When Brannstrom played with Chabot, Corsi 4 of 56.34. When Brannstrom played with Zub, 51.25. When the only time Brannstrom was below 50% is when he was playing with Nikita Zaitsev. Like everyone, when he played with Hammer, 61.74. When he played with JBD, 51.43. Are you getting what I'm putting down here, Ross? When he played with Sanderson, 66.67%. Like, say what you want about Branny not living up to expectations and not getting enough points for a guy that's labeled as the franchise and moving pucks. But very quietly, he gets the job done in all positions. So for the people, I just can't wrap my head around the people that are putting Brandy on the chopping block to get him moved to make money for Pinto, because you need versatility, guys. Did we not learn from last year how injuries can derail a roster and how you need guys that can step up and elevate their game when needed? So I don't know. I rest my case. I'm a Brandy guy, and I think if you're not a Brandy guy, you're overlooking the value of his versatility.
I think that the versatility is all well and good. And I would just come back at that and say, look at the depth that we've covered on this organizational value ranking. Look how much of it is on the left side of the back end.
Brandy can play right side.
Okay. Well, on the back end in general, I think that last year, their biggest issue was not being able to get any offense from their bottom two lines up front. So if that's where you have to cut to be able to get it up, you need to have money out. It's almost just like the salary cap's to blame here, not Branny. It's just like, hey, $2 million, like that would pay for Shane Pinto's. And you just talked about how Joseph, Kubalik, and Pinto, that's a great third line. But it can only happen if you have an entry-level contract, or two, I guess, because Sanderson's still on his entry level on the back end. But no, I don't like how I've been spun into a Branny hater based on this. I actually think he's a really good dude too. I'd love to get him on the show. We almost had him, and then he got called up because that wasn't this year. He didn't play AHL.
No AHL this year.
Yeah. No, he took a huge step. And if he can take that same step again, and if he gets 25 points and can be a solid defensive presence, even though it's defending in a different way than maybe the, prototypical defensive defenseman is, I think there's room for him, but it's going to have to be at the right price when you've got two defensemen making over $8 million. Only two teams in the league have that, Pillsy. Not this year, of course, but after next year. And it's the New York Rangers, who've got Adam Fox and Jacob Trouba, both at $8+ million. No other team has two defensemen making over $8 million. So with that, other defensemen are going to have to take less. And then after 2 years from now, then Chychrun needs a new deal. So it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. But Erik Brannstrom certainly, I think, did a lot of service to himself in the public perception of him with his play last year.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I don't think Branny's going to break the bank. I think that's the good thing about Branny is he's just hierarchy-wise, he's going to kind of be stuck as a bottom pair defenseman in the salary cap hierarchy as well. And Ross, I feel like people, both of us have felt this kind of divide. People you're either a Tyler Kleven lover, and that means you hate Branny, or you're a Branny lover, and that means you hate Kleven. No, we can like both of them. You like Kleven more than you like Branny. I like Branny more than I like Kleven at this moment in time. But I talked about it when we covered Kleven. There is a world where Brannstrom and Kleven play on the same pair, and they did that, Ross. Mind you, only 10 minutes of ice time, but Kleven only had 8 games, and they had a Corsi for percentage of 65. Like, that could be a really, really good bottom pair, and those two guys could grow together, and they'd be a yin and yang. So, I don't know. My final message is I don't want there to be this Kleven-Branny divide, because people often say, well, if Branny's gone, finally that opens the spot for Kleven, and kind of vice versa. So I don't think that needs to happen, and I think that would be an ideal third pair for me moving forward.
Well said, Pillsy. Everyone let us know in the comments, what do you think Erik Brannstrom is going to bring next season, as he just had his 24th birthday, Pillsy. Right, it's go time for this is the prime of his career he's entering now. Erik Brannstrom comes in at number 15 on our organizational value rankings. All right, Pillsy, any final thoughts on today's show?
Final thoughts for me. Should we do Forsberg's mask? Do you have those pictures up, or you want to do that later?
Let's do that tomorrow. I keep saying tomorrow. You know what? I'm just pushing it. I don't want any helmet to get any shine until we unveil Matt Sogard's mask.
No, that's definitely fair. Okay, well, final thoughts for me is thanks to everyone that joined. Martian and I doing the live reaction, or the immediate reaction yesterday. You guys know that's our favorite thing to do when big news hits. We want to be getting something out there right away. Not just because obviously we're in the content game, that's important, but just we love doing it. Like, Ross, other than like that type of thing is my favorite, but the only thing that beats that is when we're mid-recording and we get live news. That it's just the sirens are going, like the vibes are up. So it was a lot of fun having people in the chat for the YouTube premiere. So thank you to everyone that joined along, and I hope you enjoyed it.
And I think this kind of goes hand in hand with that. But my favorite thing is breaking the news to other people. And I know
you love it.
I love calling you guys. And my first question is always, do you know? Do I know what? I'm eating dinner. No.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. So we got to break the news, or I did to you and then Martian. And yeah, you guys did great, man. It was clear the passion that you guys have for the team. And that's why I think people are attracted to the show, because they know that we're just the show for fans, by fans, the people's pod. And we got a lot in store for you coming up in the days, weeks, months, years.
There we go. Decades.
So make sure, buddy, we've been doing this half a decade.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, it's not that crazy.
We're halfway there. Heck yeah. We're fired up for the home opener and a whole lot else as we inch closer. 1 week today, the Senators will be heading to Buffalo. The rookie tournament starts a week tomorrow. And then the following week, the real camp gets underway. But for today, we say goodbye. We'll chat tomorrow. More organizational value rankings. We're getting right up till the top of the 4th tier, going into the top NHLers in the organization. And we've got a Sens Central citizen. We meant to do it today, but with the Jake Sanderson news, well, you know the rest of that. But great one. We've already got it recorded. We're looking forward to introducing you to Jacob tomorrow. But for today, we say goodbye. For Brandon Piller, I'm Ross Levitan. This has been the Locked On Senators podcast, your team every day.